What's going on, everybody? This is Kyle here at Alldogs, and the day has finally come. Chad and I are going to be Titan swapping Chad's 22 Pro 4X.
This is round 2.
Alright guys, so a lot of this video is going to be a voiceover because some of the camera angles that we took didn't end up working out very well, but here you'll see we have the truck on the lift right now and we're starting to break down the front suspension on the passenger side. I believe that I'm messing with the strut mount right now, which we had especially tight and needed a little persuasion to loosen up. But generally on a Titan swap, just about everything on the front suspension is going to be taken out and replaced. So your upper control arm, your lower control arm, your, depending on how you do it, your inner and outer tie rod, the coilover, and also the CV. So all of that is going to come out in this shot here. You can see Kyle is helping me with it, especially on a Titan swap. Because you're going to be pulling upper control arms, it's much easier to have a second set of hands because the spindle is going to be moving around freely. You could always use a rope or ratchet straps or something and kind of tie the spindle out of the way so that you don't put too much stress on your brake and ABS lines, but having a second person definitely makes this a much easier process. You'll see here that we're pulling the cotter pins for the CV and, well, cotter pin and the axle nut. We like to use needle nose pliers and a hammer to kind of tap it out. It just kind of makes things quick and easy. Impact makes easy work of the axle nut. And then I believe from here it looks like we're going to start pulling the Koni coilover. Most of what we're doing right now is a process that's shared between the 2nd gen Frontiers, Nexteras, and also the 3rd gen Frontier. There's really not much difference here in the breakdown and the assembly. Before doing the Titan swap on the truck, I actually sprayed the frame down with Ralican Cosmoline, so you saw me rubbing the frame there. I was checking to see how the waxy coat has adhered to the frame. Definitely recommend it if you live in a salty environment. It should help get a lot more life and corrosion protection. Before we got to this point, when we were starting to disassemble the passenger side suspension on the new Nissan Frontiers, one difficult piece that we ran into was removing the sway bar on this truck. Nissan, on the driver's side, there's a sway bar bracket that interferes with the fan shroud. The fastener, actually, it's just about impossible to get anything in there, a wrench or a ratchet. So it's a struggle to remove the one bolt from the sway bar bracket that retains the sway bar to the frame. Here we're being very careful of the ABS lines. You don't want to pull them too tight. You can end up snapping the line and you'd have to replace it. Nissan, on the new trucks, on the 2020 and up, they changed the thread pitch and diameter of the inner tie rod where it mates to the outer tie rod. So that was actually one hurdle we had to overcome, and it was our stopping point when we tried doing a Titan swap on this truck the first time, about 2 weeks before this video was shot. So we had the front passenger side all done. We had the Titan upper, lower, we had the coiler, we had everything in and ready to go, and we were going to put a tie rod extension on that you would generally use for the second gens, and it wouldn't thread on, it wouldn't fit. So we got to spend the rest of that night reverting everything. It was a pretty significant disappointment. Here we're turning the steering wheel to expose a little bit more of the inner tie rods so that we can get a wrench on there and remove it, which we did outside of the video. Here it looks like we're getting ready to pull the cam bolts from the lower control arm. On my truck, I opted to not replace the brake lines with extended brake lines like a guy would normally do when doing a Titan swap. What I did is I opened up the bracket that retains the hard line and pulled enough slack down to give us the extension that we needed. The plan is to revert this truck back to my Cody setup at some point in the future, or at least it was, so I didn't want to make a permanent change to the brake lines and then have to bleed the brakes and then do it all over again when undoing the Titan swap. Here we're lowering the truck to make it a little bit more accessible to holding the spindle. We're getting ready to remove the upper and lower control arms, and so it's easier to set the spindle in my lap, for instance. As you'll see right here. So we've broken the upper control arm loose, and then we jump to a fully Titan swapped passenger side. So we managed to not record any of that parts swap there, unfortunately, but you'll notice that we're running a Fox coilover up front. We have an extended inner tie rod. That's the correct length for a Titan swap application. One thing you'll note here as well is if you have a good eye, you'll see that there is a little bit of fabrication work done to the lower control arm. This is generally not done on a Titan swap, but I was dead set on running these Fox coilovers, which are a little bit longer in length than a Titan swap would normally use, and so my workaround was to recess the lower shock mount on the lower control arm down about an inch so that the coilover would work in this application. So we're going to jump to the rear now. The rear on the third gen Frontiers is about exactly the same as the previous gen, with one exception. There's now a rear sway bar. In the video here, you'll see that it's already been removed. I already have the ad leaf installed on this truck when I was running the Coney kit, so the only thing we're really doing back here is adding our longer Fox shocks and also an extended shackle, a lift shackle. So on the driver's side, you do have to drop the spare tire to make room to remove the factory shackle so you can get the aftermarket one in. We're working extra fast here, as you can see. But really, there's not much excitement to the rear. Since we were already halfway done, since the ad leaf was already installed, it was a pretty quick process. One other thing that we did in the rear is we added Spider Track's 1.5 inch wheel spacers. We get a lot of guys that ask, well, do you swap a Titan rear axle in as well when you Titan swap? The answer is generally no. Most guys will run a wheel spacer to get your track width closer to even. On the front, it's a plus 3 inch track width. So most guys will run about 1.5 inches in the rear and get close. But here we have the finished product. The truck is sitting on its Titan swap suspension for the first time, and here's a walk around. From here we take the truck over for alignment, and then here are some glamour shots. The truck came out really nicely. The third gens look fantastic with a Titan swap, and it drives really, really nicely too.
Thank you very much, guys, for taking the time to watch this video and our other videos as well. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. We do videos on occasion that can be informative or entertaining. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via Facebook Messenger, via web chat on our website, email, phone. You can even comment here on YouTube, and we'll try to answer your questions as best we can.